Welcome back, everyone. As the Muslim polemic goes, Jesus spoke Aramaic, but the Gospels were written in Greek. In this video, I'd like to present 10 brief but relevant considerations in response. First, the statement Jesus spoke Aramaic, but the Gospels were written in Greek is misleading, since it is intended to mean that Jesus did not speak Greek also. However, many scholars believe that Jesus had proficiency in 3 languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. If you want a sampling of scholars who emphasize that Jesus may have spoken Greek, pause this video, look up the resources on your screen, and read to your heart's content. In particular, Stanley Porter has argued that Matthew's version of the Sermon on the Mount was delivered in Greek. Thus, the assumption that the polemic entails, namely that Jesus did not speak Greek, needs to be proven and not simply assumed. Proficiency in multiple languages would not have been unusual for Jews in Jesus' day. Muslims intentionally overlook this fact. This leads us to our second observation. Greek and Semitic speakers in Jesus' milieu were not opposed, as Muslims would have us believe. Scholars like Stanley Porter speak of the complex multilingualism of the Eastern Roman Empire, noting that Jews, and especially Jewish teachers, would have been functionally bilingual and proficient in Greek. Martin Hingel estimated that 10 to 20% of resident Jews in Jerusalem spoke Greek as their vernacular or mother tongue. But Muslims want to act as though Aramaic and Greek are at different ends of the spectrum, with a massive divide in between. We should therefore see a substantial problem when the New Testament crosses over that imaginary divide from spoken Aramaic into Greek texts. But that is simply not the case at all. These languages existed side by side. Number 3, Greek inscriptions. In Palestine, the triumphal progress of Greek makes an impressive showing in inscriptions. From the 3rd century BC, we find almost exclusively Greek inscriptions in Palestine. Do you think that Jews made some of those inscriptions? I'll go with yes. It's just too bad that Muslims weren't there to tell those Jews that their inscriptions were in the wrong language. Now, fortunately, having been illuminated by Muslim methodology, we can all disregard all of those inscriptions as spurious, since Jews spoke Aramaic but wrote many inscriptions in Greek. Okay, maybe not. Fourth, we find lots of Jews with Greek names in the ancient world. A couple of relevant examples would be Jesus' disciples, like Philip and Andrew, to name a few. Fifth, the Essenes, who had a very critical attitude toward the Greek world, could not get by without the Greek language, as is shown by the Greek papyrus fragments found in Qumran, which include fragments of the Septuagint. Number 6, the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek, again showing the prominence of the language. I suppose Muslims would have had it translated into Aramaic. Number 7, along with the Septuagint, is the letter of Aristeas. Whatever you think of its historicity, it does take for granted around 140 BC that the 72 translators who came from Palestine had all had a solid Greek education. This, again, is a reminder of the prominence of the Greek language. Number 8, Maccabees. Moreover, the books of Maccabees clearly show that not only the members of the Hellenistic party, but also many supporters of Judas and his brothers had a command of Greek. This is the only way in which the embassies to Rome and Sparta and the tedious negotiations with the Syrian rulers are conceivable. There was no stopping the penetration of the Greek language even in Jewish Palestine, and the young Jew who wanted to rise a stage above the mass of the simple people had to learn it. Number 9, ancient papyri. The final establishment and dissemination of the Koine was probably the most valuable and the most permanent fruit of Alexander's expedition. The way in which it dominated public and economic life in Egypt as virtually the only written language is shown by the Zeno correspondence. Among its approximately 2,000 items, there is not one single piece of writing in Aramaic. We have hardly 2 or 3 Aramaic or Hebrew writings from Jews in Egypt between 300 BC and 8300. Finally, Josephus initially wrote his Jewish War apparently in Aramaic, but then translated it into Greek. I, Josephus, have proposed to myself, for the sake of such as live under the government of the Romans, to translate those books into the Greek tongue, which I formerly composed in the language of our country and sent to the upper barbarians. For those under Roman rule, Greek was the best choice. The foregoing discussion shows that the statement Jesus spoke Aramaic, but the Gospels were written in Greek is in fact misleading. Additionally, we've seen several brief examples of the prominence of the Greek language. These examples indicate that if you're a New Testament author wanting to write something down and have it widely available, it would probably be a good idea to write it in Greek, a decision that seems to make sense to almost everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.